Hey everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Laura, and in today's video I am starting my brand new sketchbook. Isn't it so exciting? I also want to talk about how to make it easier a little bit and less intimidating if you struggle with that. But first, I'd like to say a few things about the sketchbook I'm using and my process. This is a Talents Art Creation sketchbook. It's a bit narrower than an A5 and has 80 sheets of cream-colored 140 GSM paper. It has one bookmark ribbon and an elastic band closure, but it doesn't have a pocket in the back. Maybe I'll stick one in if I think I need one, but I didn't use them a lot in my previous sketchbook. It's actually the same sketchbook I got for Ben a year ago, but I heard more and more artists online talk very positively about it, and since it's still very affordable, I wanted to try it myself. I already had a good first impression of it last year when I set it up for our nephew, and it only cost about €7 on Amazon, so there's nothing to lose. And that's actually a good tip if you want to start a sketchbook. Get a very cheap one, so that might help you avoid being too precious about it. By the way, the stickers I put on the cover are all from Lord Grizz Patreon, and I hoarded a lot of them over the past few years. So the decision-making process for which ones I should put on the cover took ages. However, this time I didn't want to paint the actual cover of the sketchbook as I did for Ben's sketchbook, even though I think that makes them look extra special. I remember it being kind of stressful to get some colors opaque. I used paint pens, and I remember the color I used for the skin especially being extra watery and translucent. So I decided to create my illustration on the inner cover and the first page of my sketchbook instead. Also, using kind of watery paint pens on the leathery texture of the cover feels kind of weird. It can be also very satisfying though. I just didn't feel like it that day. Drawing on the inside of the cover feels kinda weird too, but for me it's still a lot easier than painting the cover. I prepared the sketch the day before, and for the colors I used mostly alcohol-based markers, but also colored pencils and a paint pen for the highlights and finishing touches. For the illustration, I decided to go with my World of Warcraft character, my Demon Hunter Shayrix. And if you're following me for a little while or watched my Inktober videos or sketchbook tour, you probably know her already. I really drew her a lot at this time, and I still enjoy drawing her. It's a lot of fun. I wonder if that's close to what it feels like when you have an OC. I don't really have an OC yet, at least none that existed for longer than one drawing. My Demon Hunter is probably the closest to an OC, but I created her in the World of Warcraft character customization and not on paper, and even though I don't draw her exactly like her model looks in the game anymore, I still did not invent her design by myself, so I guess that doesn't count. But with my improving art skills, I'm quite optimistic that I'll probably come up with an OC I like in the future. And then I can use them for my cover illustrations instead of my WoW characters, even though I can't imagine to stop drawing WoW characters altogether. I just enjoy it too much. But let me know if you're interested in other artists' OCs. I think they are a lot of fun. Do you guys have OCs? Let me know in the comments. And that already brings me to the next little tip to start a sketchbook. Draw your comfort stuff. Maybe you already have an OC you like to draw over and over, but even if you don't, there is that one thing you draw all the time, right? That thing you doodle when you're on the phone, for example, or if phone calls are as much of a horror for you as they are for me, the thing you doodle next to your notes. You know what I mean, when you're not thinking about it and your hand just moves the pen on its own. A certain animal maybe, little hearts or stars or planets or maybe florals. Whatever it is, draw that. Even if it's just a silly little warm-up, you just started your new sketchbook. Congratulations! I hope that I can share my sketching process and how I come up with ideas with you in the future. But for detailed stuff like that, where I have a lot to figure out on the way, I'm just not yet confident enough to do it on camera. And also, I'm very slow. Maybe I could try it for my digital art though, if you're interested in that. But anyway, I liked how my sketch turned out, and I must say, I like the finished illustration even more, which is pretty rare for me, to be honest. She did have quite a long ugly stage, but in the end everything came together the way I imagined it. It was a true trust the process situation. It took me quite long to pick the colors in advance though, especially the ones I used for her skin I was very nervous about. In the game, she also has that kind of purple, grayish, tainted skin from the demonic part of her. So I'd always recommend testing out your color palette separately from your illustration. Especially for alcohol-based markers, that's important since they change their colors quite a lot when they are drying. And also, at least for Ohuhu markers, the caps don't really match the actual color. Since my new sketchbook has that cream-toned paper, I tested the colors again on the back cover inside to see what it looks like on that paper, and I really like the look of it. I mostly used bright white paper sketchbooks before, and I wasn't sure about the creamy paper, but actually I don't think that will be something that bothers me. So another thing you can do to get started is making a swatch page, for example. Just try out your favorite supplies on the new paper and get a feel for it. It's a great way to just fill a page, and having a swatch page like that is actually super useful too. Personally, I'm not the biggest fan of the process of making swatch pages. I'm just too lazy to do it and usually do my swatches next to my sketches I want to color. But actually, just having a swatch page for my alcohol-based markers alone would save me a lot of time in the long run. Some people even create very aesthetic-looking swatch pages, and I used to try that in my bullet journals a few years ago, but I realized that I'm just not patient enough to make them look neat. But to be honest, they don't have to look neat at all. A sketchbook in general doesn't have to look neat, not even the first page. I just was in the mood to try making a cool looking cover spread. However, obviously that whole cover page thing is a very try-hard attempt of starting a sketchbook, and it also can go terribly wrong if you're obsessing over making it look perfect, but it doesn't turn out the way you imagine. It's always the first thing you'll see when you open your sketchbook, so if you're not confident in your abilities of making a cover illustration, it's probably better not to give the first page so much meaning. What I like to do in my first 3 sketchbooks is writing down my goals for the sketchbook, taping some random stuff or stickers in, and maybe write the date and sketchbook number, whatever number I'm at, and that's it. And on the next page I just drew what I was feeling like drawing without a lot of pressure, just to get the ball rolling. But trust me, not liking the cover page so much is not the end of the world either. In my previous sketchbook I ended up with a meh kind of illustration, and it actually didn't bother me too much. But another popular thing many artists do is leaving the first page blank, and maybe they come back to it later, or it just stays blank. And honestly, even though I don't do that myself, I think that's a very valid way to avoid that pressure that comes from the first page. Also, what does that one page matter when you finished a whole sketchbook? By the way, you probably noticed that I'm checking the next spread a few times. This is because alcohol-based markers, as you probably know, bleed through the paper a lot, and I'm checking if it's only the back of the page or if it goes all the way through the next sheet too, because I didn't manage to find that little plastic protection sheet in that chaotic mess I want to call Studio in the future. However, I'm rambling again. What I actually wanted to say is that I'm going to glue these next two pages together anyway. That's actually not my usual way to deal with marker bleed through, but that first page in any kind of notebook is always kind of weird and doesn't really open or lay flat at all. So I always glue those pages together, no matter if there's marker bleed through or not. It's just inconvenient to draw on that page, and I think a sketchbook should be convenient, right? Speaking of convenience, I want to emphasize the most obvious thing about sketchbooks. It's so obvious yet often forgotten in the era of #aesthetic, Pinterest and Instagram pictures. Sketchbooks don't have rules. You can draw literally everything you can imagine when you feel like it, and you don't have to show it to anyone. If there's ugly stuff in it, nobody needs to know. And even if you show your sketchbook to other people, nobody cares. There are two options. A, they aren't artists, so what you say is ugly is probably still quite good in their eyes, or at least they wouldn't find it bad enough to make fun of it. Or B, they are artists too, so they know what it feels like to make ugly art because they had to make a lot of it to get where they are now. Well, obviously, this refers to real-life people. On the internet there are some trolls, so you shouldn't take what the mean people on the internet say too seriously. I can only say that I didn't receive a lot of hate yet at all, and I shared a lot of my ugly art already. Most of you guys are really kind and sweet people. But really, the thing that helps me the most really is that what matters is not that most of the stuff I draw looks pretty, but that I just put in the work. Here's an example for you. I'm doing daily gesture drawings for almost 2 months now. I hated it for 3 weeks at least. I hated it so much I wanted to quit. I just couldn't get the hang of it. So I thought, you know what? I just keep doing it for a bit longer, and every day when I'm done with my 20-minute to half an hour session, I save the file without looking at it again. And suddenly, a few days later, it went a lot better and it actually started to be fun. Of all my daily exercises, gesture drawing is the one I usually enjoy the most. And when I compare today's file to the one I started out with, I see massive improvement. And yeah, I know, everyone says this and you're probably sick of it by now, but it's true that you have to be bad at something and you have to deal with being bad at it for quite a long time in order to get good at it. And it just took me way too long to get that in my head, which is why it's now my turn to tell you all that stuff all the time. So please give yourself the permission to be bad at it. When I compare this illustration to my Inktober pieces, I see so much improvement. It's not that much time in between, especially when I tell you that I didn't draw for 3 months after Inktober ended and only started at the end of February again, more serious and with a structure. I'm not saying I'm an amazing artist, but thinking of what I can do in a year when I keep putting in the work, it feels incredible and exciting to me. And with that, I hope you enjoyed this video and maybe found it inspiring or motivating. And if you did, please leave it a like and consider subscribing to my channel for more art content. Thank you so much for watching till the end and have a wonderful rest of your day.